You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program, a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew. Welcome to a very special episode of the Write Project podcast. Today, we've got a host of authors on to answer one of the most frequent questions that's asked of any author. We're asking them, what is the most unethical practice in the publishing industry right now? And today to answer, we have on
B.C. Laybolt, the Canadian independent author of the 10th Lunan Regiment series, a military sci-fi saga. He also writes an immersive dark fantasy series. His current titles include To Drown in Sand, Juris Lunans, To Drown in Ash, The Dog, Bone, and Upon a Wake of Flame. B.C. Laybolt, in your estimation, in your point of view, what's the most unethical practice in the publishing industry today?
Ooh, that's a huge question. Big picture, like to pull the camera back and zoom out, it would be, and I find it quite sad actually. It would be the two things. One is the way publishing operates as the oil companies do. So there's a couple of conglomerates. There's like the big 4 or 5 or whatever. Yep. And they punch out boilerplate novels written by people who are dead, and they take up the shelf space. Now, you can't compete against that. It's a beast. That's all there is to it. Okay, I get it. That's life. But what we're missing are the wonderful writers who cracked out books in the 60s and 70s just for the sake of being able to be a writer. Yeah. So those little people get crushed by the larger massive corporations that exist now. So that's one thing that I think is brutal to writers, because it literally kills the ambition to want to do anything. The minute you decide you want to be published by one of the big 5, you're setting your soul on fire. Basically, you're saying, like, I'm going to be getting rejection letters for the next 25 years, and there's only like 18 top label writers, and you're not one of them. So it's this massive uphill battle. Whereas if it were 1960 or 70, you could come up with some really crazy stuff, and there might be a small press somewhere or something like that who's willing to pick you up and pitch you forward and sort of carry you. I mean, that is how Stephen King got started. Absolutely. Stephen King, I don't think, would get started in this day and age.
No. He'd have to self-publish, and he'd churn out a book every couple months, and he might do okay, but honestly, he might not.
So that leads into the second thing. And I don't think it's unethical, but I do think it's the biggest challenge. And what that is being a writer, an indie writer, operating in the Amazon algorithm. Because when you find a genuinely readable book that you enjoy, it's like finding a diamond at the bottom of a sewage tank. The algorithm crushes you down. You get a couple of bad reviews, and no one can see this gleaming little gem that's down there. And I've read several books. One of them is Dobbins, but he's been able to. The Starving has been able to do well because of effective marketing and good reviews and things like that. But there have been some other writers who have wonderful pieces that they've published, they've put it on Facebook. I quit, I give up. No one's buying it, no one wants to read it, it's over, I'm out. And that's a real shame, because some of those books are really fantastic. And again, like, I harken back to the 60s and 70s, there would have been a little Del Rey press or a little press somewhere who would have grabbed that and said, if you just polish this or this, or maybe it's ready, whatever, you really could make a thing of this. So, to me, the mindset has to be that you're writing because you want to be a writer, you're writing because you want to improve, but ethically, the big 5 are going to crush you, and you can't. I don't think that now is the time to think that you're going to score the movie deal. I think the only way to go forward now is to be driven and believe in your capacity and your potential, and reviews be damned, and whatever. Just hone the craft, keep doing it until either something breaks or you die. And I think that's the right motivation for anybody to do anything, really.
Yeah, for sure. That makes perfect sense. And speaking of like great authors who kind of like get buried by the algorithm, to me, Joris Lunas is one of those. Joris Lunas, am I saying that right?
Joris Lunas, yeah. Thank
yeah,
you.
no, that's one of
good.
them. You sent that into one of our anthologies, and we loved it. We just couldn't dedicate the page space to it, but it's an amazing short story.
Oh wow, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, we were like, you don't even understand. Me and the editor, one of them, Ellen Curtis, were just sitting there heartbroken because it's like, how do we craft this rejection letter? Because it's amazing, but we can't put it out there. Like, it can't fit. It doesn't fit in the collection, sadly. How do we tell this author this?
Well, like I said, that's all part of the process, and business being what it is, and marketing being what it is, you have to make. I'm a nurse in real life, and I know about surgery, so there's cuts that have to be made that are extremely unpleasant, but it just has to be done sometimes. Totally get that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Colleen Helm from Utah. She is the writer of the Shelby Nichols Adventures series. Colleen Helm, in your opinion, what's the most unethical practice in the publishing industry right now, if you know of any?
Pirating to me is pretty bad, and I get Google alerts, gosh, at least 2 or 3 times a week where my books are somewhere, and I always have to go and ask them to remove them. But I think that's a horrible thing that people do. And of course you want a free read if you can get one, and I think that's kind of hard in our business because everybody says, oh, give your first book away.
Yeah.
And then you'll get readers, and that works to a certain extent, and I don't want to say that's a bad thing, but
it's true. But you're and I understand, and it's correct in some ways, and you'll always get some. Like, again, I got your first book for free on BookBub, and then
yes.
I got the next 2 at least, and the rest are on my to be read list kind of thing. But
yes.
At the same time, you're like, some of the readers that I get from things like that, from free books, I think I'm getting readers who only read free books.
That's
right. Yeah.
It's so true, and that's all they want to read. And so you think, well, they're not a good judge of my story.
Yeah.
I don't even like this sort of story, but it was free.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Kayla Krantz, who's calling in from Detroit. She's originally from Houston. She writes the Rituals of the Night series. Kayla Krantz, what's the most unethical practice in the publishing industry, in your opinion?
That most unethical. I haven't really run across many people who do unethical things, but I have seen like a few writing scandals. I remember one, I don't remember the name of the author, but he would put like offers for giveaways at the very end of his book to encourage his readers to flip to the end, which would get him Kindle Unlimited reads.
Yep.
And that's so goes against Amazon policies.
That wasn't even, I mean, one guy was famous for it. I also can't remember his name, but that just became a bit of a weird book stuffing practice, to the point where you've got 4 books in your Rituals of the Night series. What some authors would do is they would put out, say, the 4th book, and then put all 3 books in the back of the 4th book, and then have, like you said, a giveaway code at the very end. So even though it's only 200 pages of new material, people would have to scroll through 1,000 pages to find the code, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, and then the author gets paid for every page that they skip.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is just silly. That said, I love Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah, I do too. It's actually wonderful.
Yeah. Do you have it, by the way, Kindle? Do you read a lot of indie stuff or Kindle Unlimited stuff or stuff like that? Because I know a lot of authors that don't.
I actually do. I like Kindle Unlimited as both a reader and an author. I like to book. I like to review books on the side. So having Kindle Unlimited gives me the opportunity to check out a bunch of new authors and different works without having to crack into my budget for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's only so much a month, isn't it? Do you have to pay it? That's right? Kindle Unlimited's only like so many dollars
It's like
a month,
$9
like
or
Netflix.
$10 a month.
Yeah, so it's like Netflix for books.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Hello, Reilly. In your experience right now, what's the most unethical practice in the publishing industry at this moment that you're aware of?
Oh, that I'm aware of. I would say publishing companies that don't disclose to their writers about their own writing and their own publishing.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening a lot. Yeah, it's way too much.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Sarah Thompson, who in February released her first book through Engine Books called The Love of Summer. Sarah Thompson, in your experience, if any, what is the most unethical practice in the publishing industry right now?
Asking authors for payment up front for publishing.
That's a thing?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Why would the author pay for the publishing?
Uh-huh.
What? That's not how anything works.
Right. The saddest part about it is that it's being done by most big publishers.
That's ridiculous.
The bigger they are, the more they want from you, too.
That's ridiculous.
It's a bad economy. They don't want to take a chance on anybody.
Yeah, no. I mean, at that point, why not just self-publish? Honestly, like, if it's going to come out of your pocket anyway.
The only reason that I can think people would actually pay is because of what they can put behind you in terms of marketing and press presentation.
I suppose, but I mean, like, you're an employee. It's supposed to go one way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's like you sign up for a job at McDonald's, and it's like, cool, how much money are you giving me with your resume? Like, because that'll determine whether or not you get a job or not. How is this not a bribe? Please explain.
Right. And when the product that you're selling makes back that amount of money, then you start making money.
Oh, well, that's lovely.
Right.
Yeah.
But by the way, we still want like 90% of your take. And
Oh, of course. Don't be silly.
I'm seeing a lot of people complaining about that lately.
Yeah, that's an understandable complaint in that. Yeah. An employer that wants to take money from you? Yeah, that's a complaint. That's what I don't understand is how like so many people don't kind of see that for the problem it is, because if it was any other business, even someone straight out of high school would recognize that that's a problem. You know what I mean? Like, any other job, if, like I said, if you went to McDonald's and they were like, cool, so for the first 3 months you're going to have to pay us.
Yeah.
Like, what? No!
Precisely.
Like, that's the thing, and that's part of the problem is that people don't think of the publishing industry as a job, and it is one. It's a weird job, don't get me wrong, like even just down to the way it's taxed. Like, I don't know any publisher I know a lot of publishers that have employees, like their marketing person, their on-staff editor, or the people that work at the publishing company, but the authors get paid out royalties, so it's not like a regular business where you get a weekly paycheck because you might not have sold any books that week or whatever. But It's still just a job, and I feel like people lose sight of that even when they're in it.
Oh, definitely. It's really hard not to sometimes because, again, well, like you said, it's not going to get a paycheck every week necessarily, or those kinds of things. So you kind of forget that it's employment in a way.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully.
Hopefully it's right.
Yeah.
Trying real hard.
Yeah. Well, Well, being employed at something and making a living off it are also two different things. You're going to be employed at McDonald's. That doesn't mean it's going to pay your rent.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We have on the line J.E. Solo. J.E. Solo, in your opinion, what is the most unethical practice in the publishing industry right now?
Oh, that's easy. That's how little goes back to the artist.
Yeah.
And it's sort of across the board in all disciplines. Like, I've been around a few of the disciplines, and it's the same everywhere. There's a great exploitation goes on of the artist. And it's about dollars, at the end of the day, what's getting back to the artist. Of course, like we talked about, distribution, that's what you pay for.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a toss-up between exposure and distribution, or money.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what it's about in writing and in all disciplines. And also, there's an elitism, in big publishing that is. I think it might be changing a little bit, but it's why the genres are shunned, and it's a very, very, very little, tiny, closed up little house.
See, that's interesting, because I guess it depends on what you're calling big publishing, because, from my experience, there's, not to interrupt your answer or anything like that.
No.
But in my experience, there's the huge publishers, like, say, the big five, and then there's, a bunch of, let's call them medium presses, even though that's not a term, and then there's the smaller of the small presses. To me, and I, even though we're growing, I would call Engine on the smaller side of that, and House of Zulu and places like that. To me, that genre bias only exists in the medium ones, in the middle of the road ones. Because think about HarperCollins and stuff like that, or Penguin or anyone, they make their dollars off of 50 Shades out of genre of just publishing what sells. Then they take some of that money and they funnel it in towards artsy award-winning stuff that 3 people will read, but they feel good about and think they've contributed to society, and then they'll go back and publish 37 Star Trek books. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah, I guess maybe you might be a little bit more informed on the specifics. I think I'm coming from a pretty subjective point of view. Of sort of being immersed in the kind of can-lit kind of literati kind of culture that's what's been around me, but it's been very inaccessible.
No, that's fair. I experienced that as well, honestly. My only thing that changed in the last 10 years was I stopped viewing them as big. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, when you look at it, I guess certainly you're talking about just Canadian publishers. A lot of them don't really put out a lot of books every year.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're talking about the big houses, which I guess most of them are American-based.
Sadly.
They will feed the market with whatever the market will buy, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so I don't know, capitalism is an ugly beast sometimes, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, for sure. Anyway, sorry to have hijacked your answer there. That was fun.
No, that was fun.
Yep.
And I learned a little something, because I am speaking subjectively, and
no, absolutely, and I tend to do the same way. I remember when I started Engine, and I won't name the other company, but I looked at this big, air quotes, big local company. I was like, oh my god, we could be them someday. And now I'm looking around I think we are them, and it didn't take as much effort as I thought it would. You know what I mean?
Yep. If
Yeah.
you put the work in, and this is true of independent anything, if you put the work in, you'll see results.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, even just House of Zolo today released a new journal, actually, yesterday.
I'm very excited.
Yes, and we're up at the top #1 of the Kindle bestseller in sci-fi and fantasy anthologies.
Awesome.
Just from really applying some hardcore hours, in setting that up. That was very much, as I understand it, like totally carefully considered and worked really hard to achieve that. And we did.
Good
I have
for
a
you.
story in there anyway.
Awesome. I'll look forward to reading that as well. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Amanda Labonte, author of the Call of the Sea and Supernatural Causes series. Amanda, what is the most unethical practice in the publishing industry right now?
Wow, that's cold. The most unethical?
Yeah, it assumes there is an unethical practice, which there always is. There's always something that could be better.
Yeah, I mean, it also... I think Vanity Press is the easy answer.
Yeah.
I do think that Vanity Press can be done properly, though. It's the gouging. Like, some people only want to put out a paper copy of a book and get so many copies and give them to their family, and they really don't want to learn anything.
Sure.
And they really don't care about an editor. And if somebody is going to facilitate them doing that for, like, a fair price, so they can take, like, their, someone who wants to just print their memoir and have it to give out at the family reunion, and they don't want to go through the whole process of, like, dealing with an editor or learning the ropes of self-publishing.
Yeah.
I think that's...
No, that's a service. That's
a service. But yeah, when you gouge, I think... I think the hardest thing there, and the real red flag, and the main issue there, is when someone tries to take someone's intellectual property.
Yeah.
That's kind of the... And that's just... I mean... No legitimate publisher would ever do that, but it's something to look out for in general anyway. Like, don't just sign away all your rights.
It also,
and anyone
like,
who's looking to, it's mean.
A Vanity Press is just really a printer that lies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if they just called themselves printers and behaved like that, it would just be a helpful service for, like you said, people who just wanted their stuff printed.
Some people I feel like I talk to, and I feel like they just apply it to anything that's not a traditional publisher.
Yeah.
So any service, even like legitimate services, it's like it's all vanity because you're publishing yourself, and that's not what I mean. I mean like the actual like publishers that are, parading as something that they're not, and overcharging like a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And any publisher that technically you'll see publishers parading as traditional publishers and then charging like reading fees.
Which is not a thing.
Work. Yeah, that's also not ethical and not on.
And I feel like they sometimes, like, seeing it from the other side, I think that's we're getting too many submissions. Like, I can see, so we need to stop it, let's charge a fee. And I'd be in the back raising my hand being like, or you could just close submissions and not seem shady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, good answer. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Matthew Daniels, frequent contributor to the From the Rock series, as well as the author of the upcoming novel, Diary of Knives. Matthew Daniels, in your opinion, what is the most unethical practice in the publishing industry right now? Or historically, I suppose.
Unethical publishing practices. I haven't been keeping my finger on that particular pulse in today's publishing scene, mostly because once I establish which publishers or venues or opportunities or what have you are legitimate, for example, the Newfoundland Labrador Arts and Letters competition, I don't need to then check into every submission opportunity that I would try once a year for Arts and Letters and like look into whether or not there's corruption or something. Like, I know that they're on the level, so I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff for that. But there are certainly a lot of things out there. I've been noticing lately, say in the last 2 years or so, when I'm looking to find short story opportunities, there have been a lot of websites cropping up with you can make this much based on your click rates, and you can publish effectively through this website, and you'll get X amount of money for this reason or whatever. And some of them are not great. Some, like Patreon, is a good platform.
Yeah.
They're legitimate. They're on the level. They're well organized. Their payment structure is fair, to my knowledge anyway.
Oh, yeah. They just take a small percentage. Engine has one. They just take a small percentage of your total. Like, what's the word? Like PayPal or anything like that. Like, it's not a flat rate. It's a small chunk, and it's fine.
Because they're providing a platform, so it stands to reason that they would charge a fee both to cover their operating costs and to make it worth their while to create the platform. And that's fair.
Comparable to a bank fee. Yeah.
Effectively. Yeah. And I'm down for that. That's best kind. Patreon's doing great stuff. They've represented a huge opportunity for a lot of the people in the indie scene, not just with writing, but with various other arts and other fields in general, and I'm into that. That's super cool. But then you get these other platforms. I don't have any of the names written down or anything because once I realized what they were, I moved along. Where, for example, fan fiction is allowed, but there's no outline for what your IP is. There's no fine print about how the copyright stuff works out there. And when I went digging into some of these websites for the finer details, there was nothing to be found. There were no links. There were no breakdowns. There was no legalities. There was not even any contact information. A lot of these websites won't even have proper proofreading on their launch page. You'll find editing mistakes, misspellings, and this sort of thing. And I'm like, yeah, this is not on the level.
Yeah.
That's going to be a pass for me.
Yeah, that's
yes. Okay, thanks, bye.
Yeah.
But yeah, the short answer for the big unethical stuff that I've seen was these websites that show up usually with either an ongoing series format, web serials and the like, or just a short story platform or something, or even for novels. But I see that less frequently, and they tend to be designed to target people who are new. Sort of green around the gills, or however that goes, and just kind of really passionate about getting their stuff out there. They want to be able to share a link with friends that has a story title and their name in the byline.
Yeah.
And they're really pumped about all that, and even especially if it promises a potential income. And then you go looking into the details of how that income structure works, and you can't find those details. That happens a lot, or the details are muddy. Yeah, that's the biggest one I've been seeing.
That makes sense. Thank you very much. Next up, we have
Teresita Dziadura.
In your mind, Teresita, what is the most unethical practice in the publishing industry that you know of?
Stealing people's works, like basically pirating books. It drives me.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one that drives me nuts as well, especially like indie people or less than non-household name people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.